All right, welcome back. Unit 3. You're going to begin. Um, well, we've already started. Hopefully, you've watched the video covering Louisiana, foreign affairs, the War of 1812, and Florida. And at the end of that video, there was a little bit of the transportation um, lecture. Sorry, I'm trying to get all of my stuff ready to go here. So we're going to pick up where that transportation lecture left off and go from there and finish transportation and then get to the next lecture. All right, let's do a little screen share here. That's not what I wanted. Let's try that again. There we go. All right. The United States, particularly the eastern portion, or the United States as it existed in 1820, lots of rivers, as you can see here. These blue lines are all rivers. You got the Mississippi running down. You got the Ohio running down. You got the Tennessee. The problem with the rivers was it was a one-way trip. You could float down the Mississippi, but floating back up the Mississippi was impossible. Sorry about that. I forgot to silence the old telephone. Let me just take care of that real quick. I apologize. All right. You could float down the river, but getting back up was a bit of a problem. Now, there were some spots on some of these smaller rivers where the rivers weren't quite so swift that you could go against the current. Basically, they would have horses that would sort of pull the boat alongside the river. But again, that was only done in a few places. It was very, very expensive to do so. This all began to change with the invention of the steamboat. Now, the steamboat had been invented by Robert Fulton way back in 1807. Fulton had given his first demonstration of a working steamboat that year. He continued to refine the process, and then in 1815, he gave a demonstration where he ran a steamboat from New Orleans all the way to Pittsburgh, which is, say, from here. Hopefully, you all know where New Orleans is, to Pittsburgh, which is all the way up here. So you would go up the Mississippi River and then catch the Ohio River and stay on the Ohio River all the way to Pittsburgh. So that really captured the nation's imagination. Lots of newspapers wrote about it. It really was a revolution in transportation. Within 5 years, so that was in 1815, by 1820, we went from having one steamboat working the Mississippi Ohio River to having 70 steamboats working the Mississippi Ohio River. This had a number of ramifications, most importantly, reducing costs. The cost of shipping came down in that area, and it allowed manufactured goods to move from the East Coast to the interior, because the steamboats were now coming out of this area and bringing their goods into this area. So it had a completely revolutionary effect on on transportation and manufacturing. After that came the canals. Now, a canal is just an artificial waterway, right? It's an artificial river, you might say. And there had been canals in the country before this, but New York in 1817 to 1825, New York built the Erie Canal, and that is, it's hard to see, but you see Buffalo right here on Lake Erie. If you follow that black line, that's the Erie Canal, and it goes all the way back to Albany, New York. And so the distance on that thing is 364 miles. So it's a huge canal. It reduced the cost of transportation. %. And then there was just this big canal boom. All these black lines that you see on here are the canals, and you'll notice they connect to the rivers. So you could start here in Albany, take the Erie Canal to Buffalo, go across Lake Erie, catch this canal, swoop down to this river, follow this river to the Ohio, catch the Ohio to the Mississippi, and you could go all the way from Albany, New York to New Orleans, Louisiana, completely by water. So again, this had a massive transformation on the cost of moving goods, the cost of moving people. This is travel times at 1800. It takes, if you're going from New York to New Orleans, you're looking at a 4 or 5 week travel. And then with those improvements in transportation, you can now get from New York to New Orleans in about 2 weeks. Okay. So the cost of transporting people, the cost of transporting goods, all of that stuff drops off. Then will come the railroads, which we're not really going to talk too much about. There are also roads being built as well. An early sort of, and this is a very loose analogy, highway system. You can see more canals as well. So again, just a massive investment in transportation, again, as part of the American system, okay? Internal transportation improvements. What this did for, let's just, let's get a 2 content out here. So we'll call this Western market economy. We'll stick with the canals. All right, so let's say pre-canal. Let's say you are a farmer. Okay. Just imagine you're a farmer, all right? And let's give you 1,000 acres. Okay. You don't really have a way to transport what you grow to market. Okay. So you're pre-canal, there's no way to transport your crops to market. Okay. So you're probably going to have very diverse crops. So you're probably going to have most of what you grow, you consume. Right? So you're going to have some wheat, let's say potatoes, and let's say corn and oats, and we'll give you apples. Um, you might do a little bit of trading with your neighbors, but for the most part, you're not going to make actual money off of this stuff because there's no way for you to reliably transport your crops to market. Okay. So let's say now the canal comes through, or the railroad, or a road of some sort. We can plug in almost any type of economy here. Now, the majority of your farm switches over to cash crop. You might decide that you're going to grow a whole lot of wheat. Let's just say wheat, and we'll say 700 acres of your wheat. But because there is now reliable transportation, you can sell that wheat. Okay. That gets money into the Western economy. And this was always one of the big problems with the Western is trying to get money out there. People are always getting further out into the West than the money was getting, than the transportation was getting. So now you have money. This allows you to purchase manufactured goods. Okay, so you can buy stuff like a clock. The cost of a clock went from $60 in 1800 to $3 by 1850. Okay? And a lot of the reason the cost came down was because transportation became cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. You might decide for your house to install glass windows because the cost of the transporting of the glass has come down. Back here, you didn't have glass windows. Where people had windows, they would actually just put wax paper over the window holes, and that was their windows. Okay, but now you can actually buy windows. You have money, and getting the windows to you is now cheaper, and so the windows are cheaper, the glass is cheaper, all that stuff is cheaper. So it has a massive transformation on the Western market. It gives Eastern manufacturers new customers. Okay? So the East, the West really grow substantially their markets because of these changes in transportation. In the South, let's come back to this. Cotton becomes the dominant crop in the South. If you look at this slide, you'll see cotton, major cotton growing areas in 1820. And now major cotton areas in 1860. Okay? 1820, 1860. Why does cotton become king in the South? There are 4 reasons for that. Number one, demand. There is a great demand for cotton. In 1800, 73,000 bales of cotton. By 1820, 730,000 bales of cotton. There's a massive growth in demand for cotton, particularly in England, the major textile industries in England, places like Blackpool, Manchester, Liverpool, places like that are textile manufacturing, and so they need massive amounts of cotton. And in fact, by 1851, 68% of the world's cotton came from the United States. So again, King Cotton, this massive investment and demand for cotton. Second, the cotton gin. This had been invented by Eli Whitney about 1793. This is makes processing cotton easier. One of the things about cotton is you have to get the seeds out of the cotton. And so the cotton gin made it easier to get the seeds out of the cotton. Okay. Third, fertile land, what in the US were called the black belts. Go back to the slide here, but this land running through Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, even into parts of East Texas, were called black belts. They're very fertile, loamy. Like if you've ever gone and bought like soil at Lowe's or Home Depot or a garden center, that real thick, dark, nutrient-rich land, that's what you want, because cotton is an exhaustive crop. Okay, it requires a lot of nutrients from the soil. And then finally, slavery. You can see the growth of slavery from here to here, each dot representing about 2,000 slaves, because cotton is a labor-intensive crop. The states where slavery was not allowed also benefited from cotton. The value of cotton by 1840, the net profit of cotton, that is to say, cotton profit after taxes, after costs, etc., was about 70 million per year. And that money, that the taxes collected on that, I mean, if their profit is $70 million, you can imagine what the taxes were, allowed the U.S. pay off its debt. Remember, we'd had all that debt hanging around since George Washington was president. All that debt was paid off. And money could be invested in U.S. industry. So even, again, those states that did not allow slavery, those states that had outlawed slavery, still benefited from slavery. Okay. The money from slavery was invested in basically America's first industrial revolution in the 1820s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. And the taxes collected on that cotton allowed the United States to pay off its debt. And so, yeah, it's not just slave states who benefits, it's the entire country benefits from the grueling labor done by Black Americans. All right, that is it for the transportation lecture. And I will see you when we talk about politics and the changing political situation of the 1820s that will eventually bring us the presidency of Andrew Jackson. So have a good day.